fan comments on Cannon Fodder, the channel for Arsenal fans all over the world. We've got Richard from Arsenal TV, and we've also got James Rowe, who's going to be talking us through his thoughts on the next Europa League Cup game against Standard Liège. But as most of you probably know, we like to go through the fan comments that you guys religiously, and thankfully you put on Cannon Fodder TV. And like I say, without you guys, without any subscribers or viewers, we can never ever really be Cannon Fodder TV. So, good evening, James. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you both, Alex and Richard? I hope you're both keeping well.
Yeah.
Good.
Pretty good. Thank you. Pretty good. And you know, let's just get into it. Richard, I think you've got a whole load of fan comments that we're going to go through.
Yeah, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got quite a few to go through. But
okay. Do you know what? I gave them all to you. I don't have any.
That's cool.
Sorry, Richard. But go for it.
Our first comment actually comes from Avon Grosh, who's a regular that's on the channel, and he says, "Since when, if ever, has your 11 matched Unai Emery's 11? Unai Emery will, I guess, put up a dreadful team. Unai Emery's beloved 11, which is Lino, Mustafi, Socrates, Luiz, Koležíček, Xhaka, Guendouzi, and the rest he has no choice."
Yeah, goodness. We've spoken about the Mustafi effect. Again, I in my 11, I don't have any space for Mustafi, and I don't have any space for Matteo Guendouzi. Where can he? I think in Unai Emery's best 11, I don't think Matteo Guendouzi has done quite enough to warrant to be a regular in the first 11. James, would you concur or would you disagree with that?
Well, I just think, and I go back to what I said when Unai Emery was first appointed, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about it. He took over from a manager who reigned supreme for 22 years. And Unai Emery had every single right to test his players in terms of their tactical flexibility. And because lots of players were in a comfort zone, they wasn't used to that. And I still maintain that Emery is still, after all this time, finding out what characters he's got in his squad. And you can't ascertain that over just one season and 6 games in a league setting and Cup and Europa League games. As I said, I'm in a fortunate position where I interview managers, and so it gives me an inside perspective. You're not just dealing with a squad of 16. You're dealing with characters of from coming up from the youth team, what he wants to do, and I know he's come in for a lot of criticism. I know he has, but I think some of it has been somewhat a little bit over the top. But obviously, I respect the opinion of every Arsenal fan. But we as a club cannot permutate the predecessor being in charge for over 20 years and his successor only getting 2 seasons. And we've got to kind of buckle up a little bit. And I know the clamour for the Champions League, but I mean, I think I've said this on a previous pod. I do not give 2 hoots about the Champions League. Why? Because we are not good enough for the Champions League yet. I know it sounds terrible to say, but we're here tonight to talk about a tournament upon which we have lost to the likes of Cologne, Bati Borisov, Östersunds, Rennes. And with the greatest respect to those teams, although I believe Rennes are a good side, with the greatest respect to the other teams, if you can't beat them in a European setting, what are you going to do in the Champions League? I think the most important thing for Arsenal is to win a trophy this season. It will give the club a boost. It would give Unai Emery a boost. It gives the fans a bit more belief. But I just think he's testing the water still, and he's got every right to. You know, I look at his press conferences when he was in charge of Valencia and Sevilla, and it looks like a different bloke. I mean, okay, he's speaking his mother tongue. Okay, his charisma is a lot more evident. But I just think that he knows that this is a tremendous opportunity for him, and he will not leave Arsenal with his tail between his legs. So when I read tweets about Unai Emery, if he doesn't get top four, that's him gone. Not in my book. If he doesn't get top four, but he wins the trophy, there's a third season for you. Because the history books will not show, Arsenal qualified for the Champions League X amount of years. History books will show, but we didn't win a trophy. If we don't win a trophy this season, it's 4 seasons since Arsenal last won a trophy. I think we need to put that right first. And I just think he's testing the water with tactical flexibility. And believe me, that will stand us in good stead at the business end of the season in terms of the small details as to putting players in different positions. I go back to when I spoke to Danny Cowley, who's recently become Huddersfield manager. And he told me that the longer you are in charge of a team, you know exactly what you need in terms of personnel, in terms of character, in terms of adjusting the little things. And those kind of, when you hear a professional manager say these things, you know that they're important. And Unai Emery is not silly. He's doing what he thinks is right. And I back him still. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the coming games.
It is an enigma to me that I know there are other topics that the fan base are very divided over, but to look at the Champions League and the clamour, I think one half of the fan base wants us to be in the Champions League. Maybe the other half really, like you say, that we want to get some silverware, some first European silverware in the first time in more than a generation. But again, we're not prepared, because if we do, like you say, I don't paraphrase you, but if we do get into Champions League, what are we going to do? Are we going to make a sustained charge? Or are we going to get knocked out in the early stages again?
And also as well, I mean, obviously, what I'm going to say applies to me and Alex. Obviously, Richard does a tremendous job, but he'll understand my point. I can understand with social media, but I was thinking today, Alex, do you remember when we had Stuart Houston and Pat Rice as caretakers? Do you remember?
Yeah.
I found myself wondering today, what would it be like if Twitter was around then, when we had Stuart Houston as caretaker and Pat Rice as caretaker, and we lost at home to Wimbledon, and these types of things. I respect all Gooners, young and old, but you wonder with the ones that are a little bit overzealous. Richard is certainly not, but I'm just giving an example of some people on Twitter. You wonder what they expect. You really do, because obviously in the case of me and Alex that have, been supporting the club, I think Alex since 78.
78.
Yeah, Alex since 78. I went to my first game in 1991. And you wonder about the new generation, or the Twitter generation, if you like. What do they really expect? Because we've got to rein it in a little bit, where I hope we win a trophy this year. I'm expecting we win a trophy this year. For me, if we win a trophy this year, that's enough. I mean, yes, okay, I would love more, but you got to be realistic. If we win one of the 4 trophies available to us this season, we've had a very good season. And then Unai Emery can build from there. But you wonder with the hype surrounding Unai Emery's job, and if he doesn't do this and if he doesn't do that, if he doesn't get top 4 and he does get sacked, somebody else comes in and exactly the same thing happens. What happens then?
The last thing I want, before we go into the other fan comments, really, I don't want us to be a carbon copy of Chelsea, who, quite a few clubs, like to have the revolving door that's forever changing the managers. If you're not winning stuff, no patience, the pressure comes onto the manager, and lo and behold, we see a new face. I don't want to see Arsenal to become like a Chelsea, where we're forever changing the manager every 2 years. That is not the Arsenal way. We have to give Unai Emery, the best chance possible. And I know, Richard, I know we've spoken about this before a few times. And I think you've said on a couple of occasions that really for you, if he doesn't get us into the Champions League, you think that he will go.
Well, I think that should be Unai Emery's main objectives, and I think that's what the board wants to give him, is to get us that qualification into Champions League. Now, at the moment, out of the business end of last season until the start of this season, I haven't seen no improvements. Personally, he's not really starting his strongest 11, and to be honest, I don't think he knows his strongest 11. But the one thing that frustrates me is that I'm not seeing the type of football that we normally are known to, which is fast build-up play. We are very good, like when we used to be very good in transition and getting into that final third, but now I don't see it. We're lacking in midfield and we're lacking in defence, and those areas have not been addressed properly. So for me, I think that Unai Emery has to get top four this season because he's got all the tools in terms of the attack and the personnel that he's brought in. And if he doesn't achieve top four, then I'm sorry, then I think he has to go.
Well, again, before we go on to the next point, you say that he has the tools. Lacazette is injured. Bellerin is not fully fit. Holding has just come back. Tierney has just had less than I think less than 90 minutes in total. So although he has a squad of strong players, he hasn't been able to play all the strongest 11 possible there in the first team. So I'm not making excuses for him, but the facts are there. Lacazette is injured.
Because, Alex, you know what? Another thing, I don't think that we are going to get a European final this season, because I think that the Europa League and the running, I think, is a lot more difficult to what it was last season. I think last season was our best chance of getting a European trophy than this season. So I think that Unai Emery this season cannot go and put his eggs into one basket. Focus at the games that are coming up and focus at one game at a time. If you think that you are more closer into getting in the Champions League qualification through the Premier League, then by all means focus on that. But if you feel that you're getting towards that semi-final stage or the final stage of Europa League, just take one game at a time. Just don't throw your eggs all into one basket, because that's what he done last season. That's why during the Crystal Palace game at home that we lost, he made too many changes, which he didn't need to do. Maybe change one or two players, but he ended up changing about 4 or 5 players during that game because I think at that point he thought, you know what, I'm just going to put all my eggs into one basket, even though that top 3 and top 4 was still there to get.
But Richard, is it not a fact that, again, Emery's still trying to find the best combination? He's asking questions of the players to see whether they're able and capable of doing what he's asking them to do. So he's still trying to figure out the best combination.
Yeah, but even some of the players have turned around and said that they don't understand his instructions of what he wants to do, and that's why I think Callum Chambers during the Nottingham Forest game completely ignored him, because clearly that Callum Chambers thought, well, your instructions is not working. Let me do what I know is best.
I don't want to go down that road. I don't believe everything I read in the paper. The fact that you're saying that someone said that the players are saying they don't understand the coach, I don't really tend to believe that. But I respect your opinion, Richard. I respect your opinion.
That's what I think anyway.
Go on. Sorry, James.
And also just to elaborate on what Alex says, years ago, nothing ever come out of Highbury back in the day. And now you've got pundits who are supposedly leaking information. I've spoken to many profs. What my interviews are published written, people can read them. But there are some conversations I've had that have remained unpublished. But I do not go spouting them around afterwards by saying, "Oh, we printed out this, but he actually said that," because I respect the privacy of professional players and managers and pundits who are a lot closer to the game than what I am at this precise moment in time. Could do well to do the same thing, because they might find themselves in that position one day. And when you are in charge of a group, and you've got we now have a multicultural squad for players all over the world. And just to elaborate on what Richard said about Europe, Richard is absolutely right. The Europa League is a lot tougher than what it was last year. But the challenge should be how embarrassing it was the final in Baku. The challenge should be go back and right or wrong. Go back and win it. That should be the challenge. And we'll see at the business end of the season, how we are. But you've got to look, as I said before, this competition in particular, tournament football in particular. But this competition, there's always one surprise that comes through that nobody expected. Frankfurt reaching the semi-finals last year. Ajax and Marseille reaching the final. Nobody thought that when the group stage kicked off in their respective competitions. So we've got to be wary of the unknown. As I've said before, our group this year is the toughest group we find ourselves in terms of the previous two editions. Yeah. In Guimarães, in Standard Liège, and in Frankfurt, it was a tremendous start, tremendous, and we've got to really continue in that vein now. What I would love Arsenal to do: win on Thursday, win the doubleheader in Guimarães, and then we are through as group winners. And then you have 2 games to give youngsters European experience, and that will hold us in good stead in the knockout phase.
Okay, let's quickly go to one of my fan comments, and that is Mube Guna, and he's just referring to the post-match video I did with Aston Villa 3-2 comeback, emotional roller coaster that Arsenal always provides us. And he was saying that he agrees with the guys and said that Matteo Guendouzi was man of the match. He was really the driving force in the second half. And on the back of that, people were saying that Matteo Guendouzi is probably a potential for being a captain or vice captain of Arsenal. Richard?
Well, I think that he's showing great enthusiasm and trying to get the fans pumped for the game as well. And when we're down, to keep the fans' spirits up. And his celebration every time that we score a goal, or if one of the other players scores, we haven't seen that for a long time. So I think that he's showing great. How can I put it? He's showing great ability to become a vice captain. I don't see why not, but I don't think he's captain material though.
Okay, I know we spoke about this on the user talk, but I just can't get my head over the 5 captains, James. And
do you know what I think?
Yeah,
you know what I think it is?
Just
sorry to interrupt. What I think it is his squad, where he won 3 Europa Leagues in a row in Sevilla, were full of characters hell-bent on winning, hell-bent on looking after one another, and hell-bent as winning as a group. And I think that he had a similar policy there that he's trying to implement here. The difference is that Sevilla side would go to hell and back to get that European title and to fight for that European title and to show how good they were. And we don't, as yet, as a group and as a squad and as a starting 11, have those same characteristics. So I think he's trying to implement something that at the moment he can't necessarily do, but that something he's trying to do has served him so well in the past.
Are you surprised at the choice of the players chose Granit Xhaka? Are you surprised at them the choice?
I am because is that the way it goes now? Is that the way it goes, where the old saying of a manager earns his corn by making a substitution, by cajoling, by arranging something? And a captain is not just what happens on the field, but also what happens off it. In terms of if there's a personal problem that a player has, who does he go to? Does he go to all 5? Do they speak about it? If he's going through a divorce, for example, or if he has some personal difficulty, just to give an example. And I just think, I want Arsenal, as Alex said earlier on, we are never going to go. Well, I hope we are not going to go down that road of interchangeable managers. It's always good to have a manager serve you well, and to give him the best opportunity. Look at Klopp when he arrived at Liverpool, what he had to do. Look at him now. Look how dangerous they are. I'm not comparing us to Liverpool, but Klopp had a lot of weeding out to do, and he did it. And he did it bit by bit, and nobody was calling for his head when he was making those changes. So I don't understand why people call for Unai Emery's, because in football you do need time. It's about players. It's about having a collective. If you look at all the successful teams in Europe and domestically in recent seasons, they've all got one thing in common. They've all got a very good manager. They've all got a collective spirit that wants to fight and win with one another. And they've also got very good players who work together as a team. And you can't cut corners. If we end up trying to cut corners in the long run, it will not do us any good.
Wow. Okay, Richard, I think we'll just probably do one more fan comments on your side, and then we'll just talk maybe a little bit more in depth about the Liege game.
Okay, yeah, Gunner Boys TV, and he says, yes, Martinez is challenging for that number 1 spot. I play Tierney over Sead Kolesnik.
Yeah, again, before going live, Jim, I just saw some tweets that apparently Tierney has not travelled with the squad up to Manchester, and I thought personally there would have been an argument to have maybe Tierney and then maybe sub him and then put Kolasinac on, or vice versa. But apparently the news may be that Tierney has not travelled to Manchester for the match tonight. A little bit surprised about that, but.
Do you know what? I'm sort of disappointed as well that if it is true that he hasn't gone, because I think during that Nottingham Forest game he was sensational. We've actually got a defender that knows when to attack and knows when to defend, and he has he's disciplined as well. That's one thing he has got. He's got a good disciplinary record, and we've actually got a defender that can actually cross a ball for once. So. And to be honest, if he doesn't play against Man United, then I would be very, very disappointed with Unai Emery.
Yeah, right. So if anyone's watching this segment of our fan comments, I've got James Rowe, who's going to be now just talking about Standard Liège and maybe a little more depth in the Europa Cup games as well. And also I've got Richard, who's making his way to 1,000 subscribers. And he's going to be like dying. He's here. Red and maybe white. I'm not so sure. Are you still deciding the colour? Are you feeling pressurized, Richard?
A little bit, but
a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm not that far away now. I'm nearly 200 away. So I'm at 798 at the moment. So not far. As I always say, it's not a sprint; it's a marathon.
Absolutely.
Indeed, it will be happening sooner rather than later, though, I believe.
Yeah. James, where can people find you? Where can they find your excellent quality pieces of write-ups on the interviews that you do?
Thank you very much. You can follow me on @JamesRotenil, and you can view my work primarily on my feed. But also you can feel free to go to worldfootballindex.com to check out my latest interviews. I have almost 90 published interviews for World Football Index since February 2018, including the likes of Brighton manager Graham Potter, Huddersfield manager Danny Cowley, and the likes of former gunner Sebastian Larsson and Ricky van Rollerswinkel, who used to play for Norwich. And upcoming publications will include Dave Kitson, Bob Wilson, and Viv Anderson. So I'm looking forward to seeing how well they are received.
So there you go. So we'll leave the link for James' social network links in the comments box below once we've done with this fan comment segment. And Richard, where can people find you on social network?
Well, you can find me on my 2 Twitter accounts. My personal Twitter account, which is RichardAFC7, so you can check me out over there. You can also check me out on my other Twitter account, which is Arsenal TV Media, where I post up news about Arsenal and obviously my videos as well that I do on my YouTube channel. And also you can find me at my YouTube channel, which is Arsenal TV.
Okay, thank you.
Which I'll put the link in the comments below.
Okay, so we're going to go into the chat very quickly, and then we're going to get into some of the Europa League games and James' thoughts on the upcoming games. So we've got TC from I'm Gonna Talk. He says, I think Guendouzi has plenty of potential. However, it's too much pressure. Oops, actually, let me just put it on the screen here. Sorry. Sorry, James. He says, I think Guendouzi has a lot of potential. However, it's too much pressure on a young guy to take the armband. I think in tough times, we would buckle. We need a real leader too. It's too young for me. And I agree.
Well, actually,
Spot on, I think.
Al, no, I'm going to disagree with that because wasn't Tony Adams about 18 to 21 years old when he took the captain's armband?
Yeah, he was.
Yes, he was. He was, but there's completely different characteristics between Guendouzi and Tony Adams. Most notably, position on the pitch. Most notably, Tony Adams, if he was fit, was going to start every single Arsenal game there was. Although Guendouzi is doing very, very well, he doesn't start every single game, does he? Whereas back in the day, if Adams is fit, he plays. And I think eventually he can be that. I think it's a fantastic thing that he's been involved in the French squad. I think that will help improve him even more, give him a taste of what's to come. And I think it's a tremendous piece of man management by Didier Deschamps as well, to give him that taste of international football. Deschamps is an excellent manager. And I think that will help us in good stead. I think eventually he could become captain material, but I think at the moment it's just a little bit too soon.
Yeah. Another one from TC. I'm going to talk to on the captain issue. I think Bellerin was a real miss. Take away the injuries, but he is one of the longest serving players, improving as a player. Loves the club and the fans. Why not him?
I think he is one of the potential 5 captains. He is one of them.
Yeah. I'll probably say more vice captain material rather than.
No, because Unai Emery gave out the captains were Granit Xhaka, Aubameyang, Lacazette, Ozil, and Bellerin.
Okay. And Richard, here's one for you again from TC.
Yep.
I think that's a very clever idea.
The Bruce Banana.
I think if Richard pulls that off, I think he'll become like an overnight sensation. He'll be doing commercials for L'Oreal.
And here's one for you, James, from TC. He says, looking forward to the Kitson interview.
Yeah, it's been really good. I'm really pleased to have every interview is treating everybody the same. You know, whether you are an unknown player playing your trade in Sweden or Finland, or whether you are the likes of Bob Wilson or Dave Kitson. So really looking forward to it. The Viv Anderson one will go on to be one of my favourites because that was a lot of fun. But you just try to keep doing your best and making sure that every interview is spot on. And won't be too long before there'll be 100 publications with World Football Index. So looking forward to reaching the milestone.
Okay, brilliant. All right, so just takes us into the standard Liege test. So, like I said in my the first part of the fan comments, he did say that we've got James not only just to talk about fan comments, but he's going to be talking about just some other of the Europa League Cup games, and of course, our next game in the Europa League is going to be against Standard Liège. James, I want to ask you, where's the main threat really going to come from Standard Liège? Do they have a chance to beat Arsenal? Really, a realistic chance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They've lost once in the Belgian league this year. Lost just once. Their last game recently, last weekend, they drew with Charleroi, although they should have won. And they have 2 players of note, former West Brom fans, and obviously I know him from his time at Alkmaar, Sebastian Pognoli. And they have a Moroccan winger in Mehdi Castella, who's also very quick. But the biggest thing they do have going for them is their manager, Michel Prudhomme. Older viewers might remember Italia 90 and the Belgian goalkeeper. Well, that was him. And he had a spell here in the Netherlands where he won the Dutch Cup with FC Twente, and at times he had them playing some tremendous football. He really did, and he's a very clever manager, and we've got to take Standard Liège seriously. You know, Thursday night is my first game of the season. I'm really looking forward to it, but it's going to be a big test. You know, we haven't. Just because we won in Frankfurt does not mean we are already through. We've got 5 games left to go. And the away games, we passed the first test in Frankfurt with tests to come in Guimarães and also in Liège. But if we can win the home games too, you know, older viewers may also remember the 7-0 mauling of Standard Liège in Arsenal in 1993, I believe, 94. And
94.
where we went away from home and we won 7-0. And that was back in the day when English clubs were just recently coming off their ban from playing European football. And we went away and absolutely smashed the team 7-0. And one of the best European results in terms of making people stand up and take notice. But you know, Standard Liège, they 10 Belgian titles. You know, they obviously you got the big 3 with Anderlecht and Club Brugge, as we say here, Club Brugge, and it's going to be a tough test. As I say, I've watched Arsenal live in this competition on many occasions since we've been in it, and the loss at home to Ostersunds, which nobody expected. You know, the difficulty away to Rennes and losing to Bati Borisov. You know, we've got to respect every opponent. We've got to, for me, the marker is, and the challenge should be, try to win every game. I mean, look at Frankfurt last season. Frankfurt were in a group last season with Liege, and they won every single game and went on to reach the semi-final. If we can have that, if we can carry it in front of us where we win every single game, you know, that could prove us to stand us in good stead, I think, and I think it'll be very important.
But Richard, you did say Arsenal probably had the best chance to win some European silverware last season. How far do you think we might get this season in the Europa League?
Well, I've got a feeling that we will get out of the group. I think we will definitely qualify and get out of the group. I don't know. I think it depends on the draw that's the run into the final. And it depends on who we get drawn with in the next stages after the knockout, after the group stage. But I reckon most likely that we could get to quarterfinals. It's going to be tough in getting to the semi-final and final. But it depends on who drops out and who is still in it.
Yeah, that's also a great point. Who's dropping down from the Champions League? Because our first season in the Europa League, we met Atletico Madrid in the semi-final, and I remember the reaction. We had a semi-final draw with Atletico, with Salzburg and Marseille, and when Atletico come out of the hat with the second leg in Spain, everybody was very defeatist. As if, it's not going to happen. I went to the home leg where we drew 1-1, and you watched the likes of Diego Godin and Hernandez and Griezmann. They were just waiting to pounce. We didn't take our chances getting that second goal. I expect Arsenal to win the Europa League this season, but that's just my personal opinion. I expect us to win it because it's 26 years since the last European trophy. And we spent years in the Champions League making up numbers and getting knocked out in the last 16. You saw the excitement of us reaching the final. You know, in our first season in the Europa League, we reached the semi-final. Second season, we reached the final. I'd like to think in this occasion we can go one better.
Yeah, Richard, do you? I probably asked you this question last season. Would you like Unai Emery to literally play the strongest team for the Europa League games, or give the youngsters a chance?
Well, I would say if you're looking at the group stages, I would say whatever you think, make sure that you've got the qualification points first to go. So if we get the qualification within the first 3 games, then the last 2 games that we could possibly do is give the youngsters a chance. And then once you're in the knockout stages, then I would say go for your full starting 11 in the knockout stages if you badly want to win that European trophy. But still keep a strong side in the Premier League as well, because we've got to try and work around. This is where game management has to come in for Unai Emery, because we've got the other cup competitions as well, where the teams will be swapping and changing. I reckon that the Carabao Cup and FA Cup, I reckon that Unai Emery will probably go with the young squad and see how far that they get to. But it's all down to game management. But I reckon that I would go with a strong side for Premier League as well as Europa.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay,
What would
sorry,
really help? What would really help us win these next 3 games, get through the group as group winners, and then you've got 2 European games to give youngsters experience coming towards a very difficult Christmas period. So win the next 3 games, win them. And then you give yourself that little bit of breathing space where the youngsters gain experience in Europe in the final 2 games at home to Frankfurt and away to Liege. It will give us a bit of breathing space with hopefully the next round of the Carabao Cup and midweek fixtures going into December. So we would really help ourselves if we can put this group to bed as soon as possible and then look forward to Europe again in the new year.
Okay. Yeah. Right, quick, last time into the chat, and I've got Sanjay Joseph, who's asking the question, actually, is Tierney absent for today's game? We did say that we didn't see his name, and actually he does confirm later on. He says, I didn't see his name on a squad for today's game, and also Mesut Ozil is absent from the squad as well.
Well, there is apparently rumour that Arsenal are willing to pay off Mesut Ozil and get rid of him within January. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I've heard from today, that apparently the club are willing to pay off Mesut Ozil and get rid of him in January.
Okay. And I leave the last word for Screenboy 8, who says, I think if we win this, we'll go on an unbeaten run. Wow.
Well, everybody seems to have forgotten the 22 game unbeaten run from last season. I really do think so, and I can, as I said,
really,
22 games unbeaten. You know, in some quarters with the criticism that Unai Emery has received, and I've made it quite clear. It's just my opinion. We did not lose top 4 at home to Palace and away to Wolves and away to Leicester. In my opinion, we lost top 4 last December, losing away to Southampton, dropping points at home, away at Brighton, getting battered at Anfield, losing away at West Ham. That, for me, is when we lost top 4, not the final few games of the season. But that's just my personal opinion. If I can just give one point on Tierney, he's made a tremendous start, but you wonder if match fitness plays a part. I mean, he worked so hard against Nottingham Forest. Match fitness is also very important. You don't want to burn him out when he's only just coming back. You know, we've got Carabao Cup, we've got Europa League, we've got midweek fixtures going into the December even. You know, we've got an international break as well in between. So we don't want to burn him out. You know, we've got him for a long time. If he's not match fit, I think it's a no-brainer for me. And hopefully he gets back as soon as possible, match fit, in order to stay with us for the long term.
Okay.
Al, can I just add to that? Do you know what? I think that the only game that he's played is only the Nottingham Forest game. I know he played 62 minutes in the last under-23s game that he played, but if he doesn't play for the Man United game, you can't really put that to match fit, because he wasn't even called up for the under-23s to play for Liverpool. So he must be fit enough to play for the Man United game, because he's been okay during training. So I don't see why he shouldn't play for Man United.
Well, I did see during the Nottingham Forest game, he was motioning to the bench that he was tired.
Yeah.
He was saying to the bench that, I'm feeling a bit tired. So I think, again, as I do respect your opinion, Richard, but I think it is down to match fitness I don't think he's quite there
and I
yet.
think it's very sensible as well. You know, he will hopefully go on to be our number one left back. Where if he's fit, he plays. There's no two ways about it. And it's still, the season is still in its infancy.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be a long old roller coaster. It's going to be full of ups and downs, and it will just be, you know, getting back on a full footing. And if he has suggested that he's tired, you know, give him the benefit of the doubt, help him in that respect. And fingers crossed we can get a balanced defence, because I think as soon as we get a balanced defence right, I think we will improve. And for me, the key components of that defence are, of course, Leno, Bellerin, Holding, and Tierney. They are the key components. And once they are fit and match fit and ready to go, we will see improvement, in my opinion.
But James, there's always been this long argument as well that the midfield, because the midfield is in such disarray, is having a knock-on effect on the defence. Because if the midfield can't get its act together, if it can't add any kind of protection to the defence, then you've got the defence who've left, you know, exposed. You know, you've got Lucas Torreira acting like he's like an attacking midfielder. He's not an attacking midfielder. He's a defensive midfielder. Yeah. So if he's out of position, and he's our main defender in the midfield, then the defence are going to be left exposed. But
what will help us is a settled team.
Yeah.
We've got to start to build a settled team now. This isn't about names. Why isn't this one playing? Why isn't that one playing? If you think of our 22 match unbeaten run, we had a fairly settled team, and that bore fruit. And I think the same thing again. People forget it's a long old season, and I can understand the excitement and I can understand the impatience of some, but let's enjoy the ride as well. Let's enjoy it. You know, we're going to have a 3 months full of summer. Okay, we'll have the European Championships, but we're going to have a summer with no football in terms of club football, and people miss it a lot. So during the season, I think some fans can just enjoy it that little bit more. You know, I obviously, you know, I don't like it when we lose or when we don't win, but you know, through thick and thin, that's the most important thing. And like, for example, going to Standard Liege at home on Thursday, it requires me taking a flight. Okay, it's my own choice, but it's something I want to do, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. And it'll be my first game of the season, and fingers crossed we will win against Standard Liège.
Yeah. Okay, just been a couple more chats. I'm gonna just read for a couple more, then we'll call this segment to an end. I've got Sanya Joseph, who's come back and said, we lost top 4 last season because Xhaka gave silly penalties to Brighton and Mustafi made a mistake on Zaha. And then, Screenboy says, we lost top 4 on several occasions, to be honest. I think he's actually agreeing with what you're saying, James, that it wasn't the last 3 games, it was...
But you also... But Al, I'm sorry, James. No, but Al, you also have to look at that 22 game unbeaten on another side of it. Is that there's games in there that we should have lost, and there's games in there that we should have won. That's another flip side of it that you can look at that 22 game unbeaten run. So if you look at it, most of those players that was in that squad, they was unfortunately they got injured. Bellerin was part of that 22 game unbeaten squad. Holding was a part of that 22 game unbeaten squad. Really, to be honest, I think that our back line is mixed. We don't really have a strong back line until the players are fully fit. I think our strongest back line, and I said on Arsenal Fan Circle last night, I said that our back line and our strongest back line is Bellerin, Holding, Chambers and Tierney. That is our strongest back line that we've got. See, I reckon that Unai Emery in bringing in David Luiz, that was a panic. That was a panic buy because we only just lost Lauren Koscielny. Okay, so I don't think that David Luiz will be at the club that long. I think he's only coming for now to make up the numbers, if I'm being honest. Or he might, once we get in a proper centre-back that we are looking to get, maybe that David Luiz might be a backup if needed. So that's how I look at that. Because I know that coming to the end of deadline, I know that Arsenal were in talks with Upamecano, and I even still believe that deal is perfectly done. But I think that they're just waiting for January to open. So if that is done, because at that time they knew that deal wasn't going to go through straight away because of the time we had, and that's why I think that where David Luiz wanted to be moved and he was causing an uproar with Chelsea, I think that's why Arsenal thought, you know what, let's just take him for now. We've only just lost Lauren Koscielny, so we need to make up the numbers for now. And that's what I think we've got. But I reckon our strongest back line is Bellerin, Holding, Chambers and Tierney. That's our strongest back line.
Yeah. Well, just going to go back to the point that James made, that we must learn to enjoy the experience. And I've got to say, during the international breaks, I don't miss the football. I really don't miss the football, to be honest. I'm just like, okay, it will be what it will be, and we can't expect the team to win all the games. It's just not going to happen.
No,
So
no, but and also enjoy it. I mean, me and Alex spoke before. There was a real Arsenal fans, especially in the early 90s, especially when I first got on board and would go to the club and all the way up until we left Highbury, really. There was always a brotherhood amongst us. And I think it's time to get it back, If someone's got a different opinion than you, it doesn't make them a better fan. If someone's got a different opinion to you, listen to them, and try to find the common ground, because the most important thing is we all want success for the club. We all want the club to do well, and some people success comes in different ways. But we're lucky to support such a tremendous club. A club of class, a club with a rich history. There's many clubs that are not to that standard. I mean, I said to you before we started recording tonight, I was recently in Lisbon. And I went to watch Sporting Lisbon against Rio Ave, and Rio Ave won 2-1 in the Portuguese Cup group phase. And Sporting Club de Portugal have had their worst start in, I think, their 106-year history or something along those lines, where the stand of their ultras, they were fighting amongst themselves, and the police were called in to the stands. Can you imagine that happening at the Emirates? So, I know it's difficult times and things, but just enjoy the ride. It's a long old season. And for me, the most important thing is we are in 4 competitions. Okay, one of them is highly unlikely, but it's still a fact we're in it. And if we can win one of the 4, we would have had a good season. So let's just enjoy the ride and enjoy the games. And obviously tonight at Old Trafford, and enjoy win, lose or draw.
Absolutely. On that note, I'm going to call this segment of fan comments to an end. Richard, as always, thank you for helping me on fan comments.
You're welcome.
The next segment, I believe, will be the Voice of Reason on Wednesday with my brother. And after that, on Friday, we'll have the Easy Talk with some guests. James, as always, it's always a pleasure to have you back on Cannon Fodder TV. And I always repeat the same thing, that we're trying to make the most of the time that you have available to us. But yeah, we're very thankful to have you back on Cannon Fodder TV, James. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. And as you say, regardless of what will happen, I will always try to find the time, and always look forward to. Love talking about Arsenal anytime on any pod, but specifically about Europe as well, because it combines the two for me. In terms of European football knowledge and obviously knowledge of Arsenal. And a big test on Thursday, and finally my prediction for Thursday is a 2-1 win for Arsenal.
Brilliant. Yeah. So if you've been wondering who or what you've been watching, you've been watching Cannon Fodder, the channel for Arsenal fans all over the world. And Monday Night Football is back.